You may start, Professor Gunani.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining here. And thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Vishwa Chatterjee, for giving me this opportunity to host the session today. Today, along with me on screen, we have Professor Guilherme Frederico, and he'll be talking about the supply chain management in Industry 4.0, about the challenges and opportunities. See, the reason why I took this topic was we may talk about any kind of industry, whether it's a software, it's a IT, it's a manufacturing firm, it's a construction industry, it's electrical transmission system. Everywhere, supply chain management has to play a very important role. So before we initiate this session, I'll just take a minute to introduce Professor Frederico, and after that, I'll hand it over to him. So Professor Guilherme Frederico is a professor of operations, supply chain, and project management at Federal University of Parana, School of Management, Curitiba, Brazil. His B in civil engineering and M.Sc in industrial engineering were obtained from Sao Paulo State University, and he holds a Ph.D. in industrial engineering from Federal University of Sao Carlos. Professor Federico has been working in collaboration with the Center of Supply Chain Improvement at University of Derby, UK, as a visiting professor and affiliated researcher. His research interest and expertise on supply chain management field are related to maturity management, performance measurement, project management, knowledge management, strategic sourcing, and impacts from Industry 4.0. And his research outcomes are published in international journals of supply chain management, Journal of Cleaner Production, Journal of Productivity in Performance Management, Benchmarking, and International Journal of Business Excellence. Professor Federico is also an area editor of Operations Management Research for Springer Journal and member of editorial board of the Computers and Industrial Engineering Journal elsewhere. And he has also been leading some special issues on reputed and highly ranked journals as managing guest editor as well as in serving as an expert reviewer. Professor Federico has also been associated for more than 10 years with multinationals like Bunch, Dare and Company, and has worked in strategic positions contributing to supply chain management review, logistics management, celerity logistics involving different segments of industry, including manufacturing and logistics service operations. So that was the introduction about Professor Federico, and I'll just request sir to please take it over from here. We all are eager to hear from you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Umesh, Professor Chatterjee, for this opportunity. It's really a pleasure to be here and contribute to the Indian audience, particularly to University of Engineering and Management, Jaipur. So I will just share my screen. Okay, are you okay now?
Yes, sir, it's absolutely fine.
Okay, that's fine. So supply chain 4.0, challenge and an opportunity. So this is a topic I have been providing some lectures internationally last year and this year as well. So this is a presentation I have conducted for University of Derby, University of Dubai, and Johns Hopkins University in Sweden. So I really like to provide in this presentation, talk a little bit about supply chain 4.0 to the research and practitioners community. So Professor Umesh has well presented myself, so I will not cover this slide anymore because he has covered all of my profile here. Just talking a little bit about my institution, Federal University of Paraná. And this is the oldest university in Brazil. It was established in 1912. So we have more than 100 programs and involving our areas of knowledge. So it's one of the biggest universities for sure here in Brazil. It's a part of the complex of federal universities. So federal universities in Brazil are supported by the government. So students, they don't pay for students because this is supported by the state. Those universities are well ranked worldwide as well as in Brazil. It's the best university in terms of education and research. We have more than 4,000 students, all of those students distributed in 7 campuses. So all of those 7 campuses are distributed in Paraná state. Paraná state is located here in the south of Brazil, just near to Argentina, Uruguay. So we have around 2,500 faculties and 3,000 staff. And we are positioned amongst the 7 best universities in Brazil and amongst the 700 in the world, according to the academic ranking of the world universities. So this is the historical building of our university. Basically, we have the rector here and some administrative activities. In the past, of course, we had classes here, but nowadays we don't have more classrooms. Here is the campus where I work on. So this is business school, okay? And this is the Polytechnical campus. So most of engineering and applied sciences are located in this campus. Sorry, just a moment here. Okay. So the topics of the presentation I will cover today are those ones. First, I will just give you an introduction about operations and supply chain strategy. Just present some milestones. It's important to understand this because we can have a better view about the current moment and what is forming what I'm calling here supply chain 4.0. On the sequence, I will talking specifically to supply chain 4.0, what that means. So what are the main perspectives of supply chain 4.0? Following this topic, I will show you some of the main disruptive technologies and some of the main applications for the supply chain field of those main disruptive technologies. Then I will talk about the main challenge of supply chain 4.0 and the main opportunities. And at the end of the presentation, I would like to give you some view regarding supply chain 4.0 and COVID-19. So this is pretty much recent talk. It's one of the topics that I'm working on some research. So it's important to make some relations and to understand how supply chain 4.0 can support supply chains in terms of achieve a higher resilience. So operations and supply chain strategy. Here we have some milestones, what we can call as the elements with giving some format for the operations management across the time. We can, the literature make a division between ancient and modern history in terms of operations management. What's the big difference? So in ancient, the main ventures were venturings from state and from religions characteristics, so origin. then the big difference is that in the modern history, operations management, it's more focused to achieve efficiency and pretty much related to the financial perspective, financial performance. So operations management should be able, in terms of the business with operations management is inserted, to provide a better financial performance besides the operations management performance itself. So in the modern history, we can consider those as the main topics which has fostered operations management across the time. The first one, it was the steam power, which was created by James Watt in 1976. Then we had the American system of manufacturing, and also the concept of interchangeable parts and extensive use of mechanization in 19th century. So in the sequence, in the electric power, the creation of electric power aligned with those elements before. So it was possible to have the mass production, and then we had the Taylorism in 19th. Operations research methods, it was really important to operations management theory and practice. This was created in the First and the Second World War, which we had the main contributions in terms of operations research methods and techniques. After the Second World War, we have the advent of the just-in-time and total quality management philosophies. This has occurred around the 1950s. So this was a big revolution in terms of thinking related to the operations management, how to produce, add the value, how to produce by reducing wastes. In 1969, we had an important mark for the manufacturing strategy. So this is what we call as the birth of operations strategy. So until that time, operations it was seen as just something to support financial and marketing activities. So from that moment, we passed to see operations management has something really important as a part of the strategy, the corporate strategy of the companies. So this was proposed by Professor Wilhelm Skinner from Harvard Business School. And one important, I would say, mark for this was one article which he has written for HBR, which is called as the manufacturing, the missing link in the corporate strategy. In 1970s, we had the advancements in terms of information technology. So differently that we are, some people are saying this fourth revolution, it's the technological revolution. That is not totally true, because information technology, the first computers, the automation systems, this was part of the third industrial revolution. So this is something that we are going to discuss further here in this presentation. In 1980s, we had the service operations and operations in terms of networks. So operations management passed to be seen as a network of operations in not only one factory, one unit of operations. This was caused because companies, most of companies started to, I would say, eliminate parts of internal operations. So companies at that time were very verticalized in terms of production of their components to produce the main product. So nowadays, we have a global supply chains. We have a set of suppliers supporting operations supporting some business. So supply chain managers must be able to see not only inside the factories, but also all network involved in that in their business. And nowadays, currently, we have supply chains with it's seeking for a technology-driven supply chains, interconnected, resilient, and sustainable supply chains. So if we look here, we can see the main topics of, I would say, topics of interest in terms of research and practitioners also for supply chain management, mainly regarding technology-driven, sustainable, and now with COVID-19 event of resilience, it's part of, I would say, highest topics of interest for supply chain management. So this is, I would say, typical framework to deploy supply chain and operations strategy. So supply chain and operations supply chain strategy must be under the competitive strategy of the companies. So we need first to understand which market to compete in and which kind of customer to approach on. So this will be the basis for the operations and supply chain strategy design in order to deliver products and services. So from this competitive strategy understanding, we can properly set the priorities, what we call as competitive priorities in operations management: quality, cost, flexibility, speed, and reliability. So we want to compete in terms of a more responsive supply chains or more cost-efficient supply chains. Of course, we try to approximate these two perspectives, these two orientations, but we need to consider trade-offs. It's impossible to compete in everything here. We need to consider which trade-offs we are going to consider, and then according to the position in terms of competitive priorities, this will drive the decision factors of the supply chain. Different decision factors in terms of inventory, production, transport, manufacturing, service, information, sourcing. But now we have an important element here: Industry 4.0 technologies. So actually, we need to properly understand what the benefits of the Industry 4.0 technologies in order to achieve these priority competitiveness. So we need to well understand the applications of Industry 4.0 technologies for each one of those decision factors. So companies which are able to well understand this will be ahead in the market, because they will change faster according to the marketing change environments as well. So talking about supply chain 4.0, just to better contextualize supply chain 4.0, supply chain 4.0 would be, I would say, a broader concept of Industry 4.0, which is pretty much related to manufacturing aspect. So in supply chain 4.0, we consider all areas of the supply chain. So I mean sourcing activities, distribution activities, and third-party relationships activities. So all of those things can be benefited from Industry 4.0 technologies. This is the evolution of the, I would say, industry revolutions. We had here the first industry revolutions, so which was based on the steam power, okay, production. Then we had the electric power applications between 1850s up to 1945. And then we had the third industrial revolution, which is pretty much focusing on the technological advancements. So this is something that it's important to be clarified. So the technological evolution, it's part of the third industrial revolution. So, and the difference from the third industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution, which we are calling here supply chain 4.0, it's that those applications, all those technologies and new ones as well, must be interconnected one with the other. So the interconnection is the main characteristics of the supply chain 4.0. So, and moreover, this interconnection must be able to provide what we can call as a cyber physical supply chains. So that means physical flows being self-executed and self-controlled. And this is allowed by the interconnection between the device, several devices inserted here. We are going to discuss a little bit more in detail in the next slides about the configuration of the supply chain 4.0. So here it's the framework. Just try to eliminate here this. So what are the elements of a supply chain 4.0 strategy? This is part of the publication we had in the Supply Chain Management Journal in 2019, which we have proposed this framework and with the elements which form supply chain 4.0. So surely disruptive technologies is the main element of supply chain 4.0. And we can call as disruptive technologies the industry 4.0 technologies. Internet of Things, big data analytics, additive manufacturing, virtual reality, and so on. But we need to understand that to well and to properly implement and operating those disruptive technologies, we need some competences and capabilities in order to well support these disruptive technologies. So we need managerial competences in terms of project management, for instance, to implement disruptive technologies, proper coordination between the members of supply chain management to link those disruptive technologies and create what we call proper interoperability of those disruptive technologies. I'm going to discuss a little bit about interoperability concept in the next slides. We need technical infrastructure capabilities in terms of network hardware to support those new technologies. Also, it's important to understand what kind of benefits those disruptive technologies are going to bring to the supply chain process in terms of their performance. So we can consider here, for instance, the SCORE framework for supply chain process. That means plan, process, sourcing processes, manufacturing process, distribution process, and return process. All processes which form supply chain management according to the SCORE framework. So then also we have those competence and I would say those supporters to the disruptive technologies, and we can understand well what kind of benefits those disruptive technologies will bring to the supply chain process performance. And this is part of the previous framework I have showed you to well understand which kind of competitive priorities supply chains must follow, and also which kind of benefits we want to the decision factors of the supply chain. Once we all understand this, we can have a proper rollout of a supply chain 4.0 strategy and achieve more, I would say, successful in terms of this strategy implementation. So just to give a structural concept for supply chain 4.0, therefore, supply chain 4.0 is a transformational and a holistic approach for supply chain management that utilizes Industry 4.0 disruptive technologies to streamline supply chain process, activities, and relationships in order to generate significant strategic benefits for all supply chain stakeholders. So look that this is it's I would say broader than just Industry 4.0, just manufacturing aspect. Supply chain 4.0 it's pretty much complex and involves much more elements than just a factory or than just a distribution center. So it's important to have this holistic view in terms of how disruptive technologies from Industry 4.0 can benefit supply chain and their members in terms of achieve better performance over the supply chain processes. Here, this is a picture where we can have a better view what I'm trying to call about supply chain 4.0. So we have here, I would say, a single flow of supply chain involving suppliers, factories, distribution centers, and wholesalers. So supply chain 4.0 implicates to have what we can call physical technologies. So are those technologies what will generate physical flows in terms of to have a cyber physical systems. That means processes of the supply chain being self-controlled and self-executed. For instance, transportation, internal operations in factories involving robotics, 3D printing, augmented reality, self-driving transportations between suppliers and factories. Internal operations in terms of robotics, RFID in distribution centers. Transportation to the final customers. We are seeing some tests and applications already in terms of drones transportation, self-transportations to final customers. So all of those technologies working, interconnected, but interconnected with what? With what we can call data, information, knowledge technologies. So this is technologies related to big data analytics, business intelligence systems, artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence generating physical flows here is through the use of structured data. And moreover, not only data, because data itself can do nothing. I have to work data. From the big amount of data generated by those technologies inserted in supply chains, I need to structure those data and create information, and information will create knowledge. It's important to mention that because some people think that data will provide everything. From the information management theory, there is a clear division between what is data, what is information, what is knowledge. So they are, of course, related one to other. But for instance, artificial intelligence involves knowledge which was generated by an amount of information across the time, and those information was allowed by data what were handled, proper handled to provide these information. So it's important to see that there is a need to have interconnection between information and data information and knowledge technologies with physical technologies. And one of the main technologies which is responsible for that is Internet of Things. Internet of Things, it's one of the most important technologies for supply chains 4.0 because it allows this, I would say, proper interconnection, and then allows to create cyber physical systems across the supply chains. So talking a little bit more about disruptive technologies. I will cover the main ones here, which can be applied, of course, in supply chain operations. As I just said, Internet of Things. So it's one of the most important technologies here for supply chains 4.0 because it provides the interconnection of sensing and actuating devices, providing the ability to share information across platforms, developing a common operation picture for enabling innovative applications. So this is a concept provided by Gug 2000 et al. 2013. Internet of Things are the key for cyber physical systems. Machines, that means machines linked to computing virtual elements through the digital hardware. IoT provides a platform using a network of sensors, actuators, and devices. And we can have many applications. For instance, tracking of goods from suppliers to factories, tracking of goods in the warehouse, sensing of package and products, avoiding damage and losses. So, but the main role of Internet of Things is not to provide a application itself, but allow on other applications, as I said in the previous framework I have showed you. So interconnect and allow that other technologies can be can operating at the supply chain, generate the proper benefits for supply chains. Cloud computing. So cloud platforms, it's important because it integrates data, information, and knowledge, which can be obtained from different technologies applying the supply chains. So it's a really important basis for big data analytics, artificial intelligence. So once I have cloud computing, I can optimize the flows from customers, from orders, for instance, orders placement, and from orders placement, and I can have an automating flow of the information and generate physical flow of those information to the supply chain processes. Then cloud computing is really important, I would say, supporter to other technologies as well. For instance, with cloud computing, we can have we can allow applications in terms of transport optimizations, automatic inventory management, automatic production. And cloud computing is part of, as we are classifying here, data, information, knowledge technologies. Big data analytics. So perhaps big data analytics is one of the most approached technologies by the literature in this era of Industry 4.0. If you look at the databases regarding Industry 4.0 applications, you find too many articles, research articles approaching big data analytics. But as I said, big data analytics itself is not Industry 4.0. It's not sufficient to create supply chain 4.0 and even industry 4.0. It's just one of the important technologies, but it needs to integrate with other ones. It's important, of course, to accelerate the decision making in terms of supply chain management processes, decisions in supply chains, in terms of demand forecasting. It can allow also transportation routing optimizations, but of course here it need to use, for instance, artificial intelligence or business intelligence applications with big data analytics, sourcing analysis and prediction, and other applications. Also pretty much important to performance measurement in supply chains. So with big data analytics, once I structure those data, I can have information with, in terms of performance measurement, it's properly said, performance indicators, key performance indicators to monitor, measure, and control supply chain process. And here, just to, I have already said this, but just to put clear, you need to think this relation, not only data, information, knowledge. These three elements together will really bring a real benefit in terms from data, of course, which is the basis, but what it's important to make this, to support decisions, is information, and to create, not only to support decisions, but also to create interface with physical flows, knowledge. Artificial intelligence, so I can have some applications here in terms of artificial intelligence integrated with big data analytics. So anticipate demand delivery. Once I know I have a knowledge, a previous knowledge, how is the demand behavior, how is the demand according to the history, I can create, anticipate deliveries. So automating process, manufacturing, handling operations, here handling operations in distribution centers, mainly distribution centers, but also in factories. Improvement of inventory management by reducing under and overstocking, and support predictive analytics in various decision makings in supply chains. By the way, I just have passed it, but it's important, just coming back a little bit regarding big data analytics. It's important to also to consider this classification of big data analytics. This was provided by the UEM in 2018. So we can see big data analytics in terms of three perspectives. Descriptive analytics, so you use data to understand what has happened in operations. Predictive analytics, so what might happen based on those data. And prescriptive, how to do, what to do action analytics. So big data analytics can support these three main aspects in terms of decision making in supply chains. Okay. Additive manufacturing. So this is what we are calling here physical disruptive technology, because it provides a physical elements, physical flows at the supply chains. So we can see various applications here, since engine block being manufactured here, up to food, hamburger. So two main applications we are seeing being allowed by additive manufacturing. But of course, aligned with these technologies, I need artificial intelligence, I need big data, I need to integrate with other technologies. Only additive manufacturing itself will do nothing. So two main applications to supply chains, and the main benefit of additive manufacturing is that it can allow what we call mass customization. We had mass production, which implicates in producing large amounts of products, but in the same standard, with the same characteristics. But with 3D printing, we can start to thinking about mass customization. That means produce in large amount of quantities, large amount of products, but with customized characteristics. Which so far, before the advent of additive manufacturing, was not so something simple. It was quite impossible to create mass customization in the factories. So robotics, we have some applications here, for instance, automated guided vehicles. But of course, automated guided vehicles is from 90s, from 70s, 70s, 80s. As I said, this is part of the third industrial revolution. But now we have those technologies interconnected with other disruptive technologies. That's why I have said that's because in fourth industrial revolution, the main characteristic is the interconnection between those technologies. Interconnection between virtual world with physical world. So two main applications here with robotics. Since distribution centers in manufacturing, assembly lines. So autonomous vehicles. The literature, some of the literature considers these autonomous vehicles has a general classification in terms of robotics, but here I have split, and just because it's pretty much related to the logistics applications, although we can also use drones, for instance, in factories to make, for instance, transportation of components between one process to another process. We are seeing use of drones to make deliveries. Walmart, Amazon, UPS have already tested and implemented some flows with drone applications. For instance, we can use drones in port operations to monitor the vessel traffic management, to monitor the vessel traffic around the port. Drones in factories and warehouse to make inspections, even internal transportation and inventory control inside the CGs. And we are seeing self-drive trucks and trains. This is pretty much pretty much feasible trend. But of course, we need a set of infrastructure elements, not only provided by the companies themselves, but we need the governments must be engaged to provide proper infrastructure to allow those technologies, to allow companies to operate those technologies. Augmented reality, so smart glasses to handling flows in distribution centers. We can use to accelerate, for instance, to find products in the CDs. Many applications in terms of maintenance, we can see all components and all the, I would say, truck system, mechanical system here to optimize and to more assertive maintenance work. For instance, there are some companies that make maintenance in elevators. They are using augmented reality to anticipate what the components you can you need to change in the elevator system according to the history of maintenance, and according to the using predictive analytics in order to know what is the most likely item that will cause some problem in the near future. Look, I need big data to do that. I need artificial intelligence to do that. Integrate all of those informations are located in a cloud platform. So can you realize that the integration of technologies is the key when we call about industry and supply chain 4.0. Even in service operations, for instance, if you go to the retail in a supermarket, when people are part of the operations, this is a characteristic of service operations, right? So people, it's a participant, they are a participant in the operation. So you can provide an app when they can quick, faster look and find some item in the supermarket or other kind of retail. So the main message here is that the supply chain 4.0 is not only one or another disruptive technology. We need all of those technologies well integrated to create a really true supply chain 4.0. Of course, that in some kind of supply chains, you can not need one or another specific disruptive technologies, but you need to look at for the perfect integration of those technologies. What will create a really true cyber physical supply chain processes. So talking a little bit about the main challenge of supply chain 4.0. I consider as one of the main challenges the interoperability aspect. So to create a really vertical and horizontal integration between disruptive technologies, data and information and knowledge across the supply chain. This is pretty much a challenge to be achieved. It's not so simple. You create a common platform between supply chain members. When we talk in supply chain, we are talking about different organizations. So you don't have control over everything. So that's because the coordination ability of, I would say, the main focus companies located at the supply chain, it's really important to make a successful rollout of supply chain 4.0 strategy. And what is interoperability? So interoperability is the ability of two or more systems and technologies to integrate and understand one each other, operate together. Chen et al. In 2008 see that interoperability is not a concept of Industry 4.0 theory. It's previous. This is related to the systems, but it needs to be followed. And of course, it becomes more complex when we have to consider interoperability not only between systems, but between systems, technologies, all data, knowledge, and information inserted in supply chains. So some of the barriers are related to the conceptual, which involves semantic difference between information to be exchanged. Imagine that. Can you imagine in supply chains when you have several suppliers, retailers involved in at the supply chain? Technological barriers, difference in terms of platforms, architectures, and infrastructure, and organizational as well. Also, Chen has put some interoperability concerns which are related to the data, services, processes, and businesses. So those are the main elements you have to look at to the interoperability aspect when implementing new disruptive technologies over the supply chains industries. Another challenge is regarding to information technology infrastructure. So we are seeing many companies implementing, they are saying that they are implementing Industry 4.0 technologies, but are they really looking for that previous to implement? You need to have proper infrastructure before make decisions. So you can have the most advanced technology in terms of Industry 4.0 technologies, but if you don't have proper infrastructure to operate that, you not get successful on this implementation, even in the operating of those technologies. Managerial competences. So we need a full coordination in terms of abilities to well implement projects involving new disruptive technology, supply chain 4.0 programs, project management methodologies applied there. Full support from the leadership. So has the other programs which involves, I would say, management, change, management transformation on the companies. For instance, lean manufacturing programs, total quality management programs. Those kind of programs, it's proven by the literature already that full leadership support is needed to get successful implementation. Not unlikely is supply chain 4.0. Supply chain 4.0 can be seen in the companies as a transformational, I would say, transformational management inside the company. You need to create a proper awareness of people that a transformation will occur. They need to be prepared, people skills, they need to be trained to operate those new technologies. As the name shows, it's a revolution that we are passing through. Industry 4.0 or supply chain 4.0, whatever be the name you are using, both are transformation, are revolution. So you need full support from leadership. Create awareness across the organization. And when we are talking about supply chains, you need to be able to develop those elements across the supply chains, not only inside your organization, but with your suppliers, with your dealers, besides internally your company. So the main opportunities of the supply chain, those are pretty much related to the performance benefits that you can achieve across the supply chain management processes. I have used here the SCORE framework. It's the most recognized and structured view of the supply chain processes. Plan, source, make, deliver, and return. So with the different applications here, in terms of different technologies that can be applied from different processes, for instance, it does not make sense to put in the plan process physical technology. It does not make sense. But what we are classifying here as a data technology, cloud computing, big data, artificial intelligence. This is pretty beneficial to plan processes, demanding plan, sourcing plan, and other decision, transportation. But of course, for processes which involve physical flows, you can be benefited from both data information knowledge and physical technology. Moreover, those technologies well integrated themselves with proper interoperability among themselves. And once we have those technologies, we can obtain those kind of benefits. In plan, we can have a more integrated plans, more reliable, transparency, end-to-end transparency across the supply chains in terms of their plan, collaboration between supply chain members, cloud computing, for instance, with big data analytics, we can foster collaborations, mainly related to the collaborative plans. Sourcing, more reliable strategic sourcing processes when you are going to choose the right suppliers, the main sources across the globe, global sourcing. So we can use big data analytics with information inserted in the cloud platform and use artificial intelligence techniques to a better decision making in terms of which supplier to choose, which regions to consider for our sourcing basis. And in manufacturing, of course, manufacturing delivery, these two main processes is where we have the most set of disruptive technologies being applied, and we can have also too many benefits in terms of efficiency, which will implicate, of course, in more profitable operations, supply chain operations. So the value added margin will be increased by the use of disruptive technologies at the supply chains. Transparency, responsiveness, we are talking about now it's pretty much in evidence the response capacity of the supply chains amid COVID-19 effects. So disruptive technologies can, of course, support for a better response capacity, not only response capacity, but the resilience, which is a broader concept, involves also recovery aspects, not only response capacity. Traceability, reliable processes, and reliable, of course, products which are produced by those processes or handled by delivery processes. So these are the improvements over the supply chain processes, and we need to understand according to each supply chain, because supply chains are different one to other. We can have one or another application. You need to well understand what are the priorities, competitive priorities you want to follow according to the competitive strategy, and which kind of industry 4.0 technologies I will apply in order to support this to pursue these processes. Just a moment, please. Sorry, I just have a break here in terms of my internet connection. I think now it's good.
Yes, it's good, sir.
So we need to also thinking about the strategic outcomes we can obtain with uh, the application of disruptive technologies. So with those technologies being applied across the supply chains, we can have more collaborative and sustainable supply chains, profitable supply chains, efficient, responsive, resilient, and knowledge-based supply chains. So knowledge-based because supply chains which have proper data information and knowledge, they will be able to create innovative solutions and new ways of operating in order to achieve better performance as well. Sustainable supply chains because disruptive technologies provides waste reductions, solutions in terms of reduce emissions by the supply chain process in transportation and manufacturing. Efficient, as we have seen, so we can be more efficient and productive. We can have more productive supply chains and efficiency, which will provide higher profitability from the supply chain processes. So more than just apply disruptive technologies, more than just achieve benefits over the supply chain process. At the end of the day, what we are looking at is strategic outcomes. Strategic outcomes across provided by the supply chains. Sorry again, I just try to improve my device here in terms of connection. So also it's important to see supply chain 4.0 in terms of its evolution aspect. This is related to maturity, supply chain 4.0 maturity. This is a framework what we have proposed in the publication of the Supply Chain Management Journal, and it's related to the elements I have showed you. So the rationale here is to see the stages of development of the supply chain 4.0. This is important because once I have this view, the characteristics of each element, each perspective of the supply chain 4.0 framework across the time, I can have a proper strategy design. I can have better decide which kind of technology I applied, because I cannot be, for instance, I cannot be prepared in terms of managerial capability supporters according to the technology levels, which is properly said the disruptive technologies I will adopt in. So once we have this view, I can adopt proper strategies in terms of supply chain 4.0. Maturity management, it's not only something applied for supply chain 4.0. I myself have worked with maturity for supply chain management, for operation services. So we can think about maturity in all aspects of management, project management. And why it's important to think about maturity? I always give an example to my students. It's a similar when you have a human life development. So when you have a baby, you need some strategies to maintain and keep the health of that baby. You need to apply vaccines. You need to give supplements, foods, proper foods to well development of that baby, and to allow him to achieve a new stage of development, the childhood, and then the adult phase. So same thing we can think for processes, for management methods, for different phenomena. So understand maturity, because once you understand that, you have a dynamic view according to the environment change, according to different environments which you decide to apply. Here specifically supply chain 4.0, but you can think, for instance, lean programs, total quality management programs, and so on. So maturity for supply chain 4.0, in terms of the four main perspectives, you can, of course, access our publication and then have more detail about that. I just giving a general view here and about the importance of this element to the implementation of supply chain 4.0 programs. So just talking a little bit about supply chain 4.0 and COVID-19. I have published an article which I provided this conceptual framework related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here, it's very related to what we have discussed: data, information, and knowledge technologies, creating a clear division here. What are physical technologies and technologies based on data, information, knowledge, interoperability, and the benefits in terms of resilience improvement. But I have conducted a survey last year. This was a global survey which I have asked for supply chain practitioners across the world, supply chain management managers, coordinators, even CEOs and COOs and directors, asking to them about what would be the influence of disruptive technologies on the supply chain responsiveness amid COVID-19 pandemic. So this is a perception study, just to give a perception from practitioner side, how much is disruptive technology important to the supply chain responsiveness. This is a view about where I have collected those responses. So which stands out here, it's USA, India, UK, and even Brazil and other countries as well. I have collected 150 responses from supply chain experts from different types of businesses, since consulting firms, automotive, up to higher education even. So researchers here, answering the questions. This is the distribution across per segment of industry and per region. And here we have a general view about the results. So mostly of respondents have agreed or strongly agreed that disruptive technologies play a crucial role, and it's important to a more resilience in the supply chains. Which stands out here is a Internet of Things technology, big data analytics, cloud, robotics, 3D printing and additive manufacturing. They consider that has not much impact. That's because perhaps we can have some reasons here. They don't really understand the benefits of additive manufacturing, even for the characteristics of COVID-19 to be pretty much related to the distribution aspects in terms of deliveries. They have put more, the results have been more focused on those technologies, Internet of Things, big data, and robotics, even cloud platforms, and blockchain as well. So, in general, all technologies provides impact, positive impact in terms of supply chain responsiveness to the COVID-19 event. And we have seen that in the practice. So those companies which were able, which were more advanced in terms of technology, they are performing better during this pandemic period. And even they are able to create innovative solutions. We are seeing this pretty much in the retail, innovative solutions to deliver products, to meet customers, different customer requirements during this pandemic, because they have technology to do that. This is very related to what I have considered as a strategic outcome, knowledge-based supply chain. So these are the references I have used to this presentation. You can have access. This one, you can also, this research is pretty much deeper than this, only this slide. Okay, you can access the entire report in this report I have produced to my university. Survey report, disruptive technologies and responsiveness of supply chains amid COVID-19 pandemic. This is not a research article, it's an industry, a kind of industry report, okay, white paper, but you can have access in this link. And other I have used for this presentation. So thank you very much. This is my email. If you have doubts, if you can approach me for research interests, I will be pleased in answer you. You can access me, approach me by this email. Thank you very much for the moment of the presentation. Sorry for some interruptions. I had some problems here in terms of connection, but I think I have gotten to cover all topics. Thank you. And I'm open for eventual questions, queries.
Thank you, sir. Actually, I will request all attendees. There are around 200 attendees in this presentation. I will request all attendees to kindly post your questions in the questions box so that we can take those up. In the meantime, there is one comment from Mr. Ganpad Verma. That is, he has defined supply chain in his own way, saying it is defined as the entire process of making and selling commercial goods, including every stage from the supply of materials and the manufacture of the goods through to their distribution and sale. Successfully managing supply chain is essential to any company hoping to compete. Yes, that was a basic thing that we have started this presentation with. Sir had started this thinking of this basic knowledge. Madhusudhan Boidya has written, thank you, sir, for wonderful presentation. But any other questions from your side? We're open for it. Okay, there's a question from Professor Sandeep Sodhi. He asks, so when do you consider a technology to be disruptive? This
we
is,
are considering.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that was the question. When do you consider a
okay.
technology to be disruptive?
Okay, so we are considering as disruptive all those technologies from Industry 4.0. Of course, as I said, uh, to consider as disruptive, the technology itself can be not enough because we have, as we have seen, we have some technology which is from the third industrial revolution. But considering the perspective of Industry 4.0 and mainly related to the interconnection between virtual and physical elements, we are calling all of those technologies being applied for Industry 4.0 as disruptive. So this is not something that I'm calling. So the literature, some of the literature adopt this terminology as well.
So there is one question from Professor Dr. Pradeep Kumar Sharma, who is the registrar of this university. He asks, sir, this was a very nice session. Kindly elaborate the job scenario in supply chain 4.0 in view of industry 4.0 or industry 5.0 business and manufacturing environment. What skills will be required to get into this field? So I believe he has asked this question from a student's perspective also. That, sir, if somebody wants to make his career in supply chain 4.0 or wants to get into the job, then what are the skills you believe should be should that student try to be skillful at? What are the things he should try to be skillful at?
Okay, the skills of humans for this for the disruptive technologies, right? Of Industry 4.0.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think I have said some of the skills already. So the capacity and the ability of people to work with data and of course artificial intelligence programs, to ability to programs different things in terms of supply chain processes, to program processes, ability in terms of not only more related to the technical aspects, but as I said, who are involved in Industry 4.0, they need to be able to well plan projects, so project management abilities as well. I consider, I think, those analytical competence and skills, but also management skills are really important to well in all levels, of course, since the strategic to the operational levels. In the strategic, of course, more related to how design to well design supply chain 4.0, and this requires to understand well technology aspects, so understand the characteristics and the applications of those technologies. But this is not enough because we are seeing many people talking about technologies itself, but they need to understand the processes itself as well. So this is not the end of. I have seen some articles calling, for instance, the end of supply chain management. It's not true, and this does not make sense. So you need to understand, you need to innovative solutions in terms of how to design supply chain processes, and then analytical skills with the being applied, supporting the applications of disruptive technologies will then support those processes. So we need, of course, I would say the supply chain 4.0 brings an opportunity to create an interdisciplinary environment. So you cannot disregard one knowledge or another knowledge. All of those are important to create, I would say, really true supply chain 4.0 and try to get the benefits from each knowledge involved in this development.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Comment from Madam Ruma Roy Chaudhuri. She writes that supply chain can be closed, like to the comment that was read previously, the definition. To that, she has added that supply chain can be closed as well, like recycle and reuse concept brings back to the manufacturer for recycling and reusing after inspection. So I take it as a comment. Professor Dr.
Okay.
Pradeep Sharma continues writing, sir, in your view, how developing countries can come up with supply chain 4.0, as most of the global manufacturing companies have manufacturing plants in these countries due to less labor cost.
Okay. This is, I would say, I have done a brief comment. So governments must be engaged to provide, I would say, a supply chain 4.0 environment to allow companies to adopt those new technologies. But as I said, if you don't have proper infrastructure to that, you will not be able. For instance, in Brazil, even in Brazil, it's pretty much difficult to implement, I would say, self-drive trucks. So you need to have proper roads for that. Even culture, education, people in the transit. So you have too many aspects and in different levels of development to be considered in terms of active development in terms of supply chain 4.0. So I see that governments must have a clear strategic path to the industrial revolution, fourth industrial revolution. We have, of course, the most of developed countries have already these plans. So even the World Bank are considering this as one of the strategic elements to be pursued. But developing countries, I'm talking based, of course, on Brazil. I have a better view. We have a large path yet to create a really true supply chain 4.0 strategy. Of course, global companies, they are implementing those solutions. Even here in Brazil, we have most automotive companies and other manufacturing companies, global companies inserted here with operations here, big operations. They are implementing supply chain 4.0 programs. But I think there will be a time with this they will achieve a constraint, they will achieve a limit, because from that time they would need a better support, better infrastructure, a better environment to follow, to continue to developing those kind of technologies. And this can only sometimes can be only be provided by a clear government in state strategy. Without this, so you have a limit. Perhaps considering those these maturity framework, you not achieve the most advanced stage. You will have a limit. Different from, I would say, developed cultures. So if have a better development, they can achieve better performance, better maturity level in terms of supply chain 4.0. Even when we consider, we are seeing a movement. We are seeing a movement from industry 4.0 to industry 5.0. So it's pretty much futuristic concept, but some researchers and practitioners are already discussing this. What would be industry 5.0? So it's I would say a little bit opposite to industry 4.0 because it considers the human whole. So they consider how to get the best benefits from humans and from technology, not only 100% focused on technology as it is for industry 4.0. And aligned with industry 5.0 is the concept of society 5.0, which has been discussed by the Japan government. How to use those disruptive technologies in favor of society in terms of public transportation, connection in the social environment, public services. So when we achieve this concept in the future of Society 5.0, the government engagement will be most important at that time. So only nations which are committed with Industry 4.0, and even if this stands the concept Industry 5.0, only governments which are engaged on that has a clear program, state program to develop that. Only those nations will get successful in terms of advancements, industrial benefit, industry 5.0, industry 4.0 advancements and benefits.
Okay, so I am not finding any question at the moment, further questions. There are some comments like excellent presentation, sir. It was such an eye opener. It's a very nice and lucid presentations. All these comments I am getting, but I'm not finding any further questions. So thank you for the excellent presentation, sir. Somebody is asking about the link. There is no link needed. The certificates will be sent to your email ID through which you register. Thank you. In the meantime, Professor Gurnani, you may kindly take it over from here. Are you there, Professor Gurnani?
I'm there.
Okay. So you may kindly, if possible, switch on your webcam and take on the program for here.
I hope the webcam is working now.
Webcam is working, but you are a bit dark. So if you can have some light or something like that to illuminate your face, if possible.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead.
So thanks a lot, Professor Frederico, for sparing your time and delivering such a wonderful lecture today. And I feel it was a real honor for all of us to hear from you. As I could understand the lecture, like you almost covered every area of supply chain, starting from the antecedents of modern operation management, the market competitive strategy, operations and supply chain strategy, then inputs and outputs for a supply chain in industry 4.0, the disruptive technologies, technical and infra capabilities which are mandatory for SCM 4.0, and also the integration of like cloud platform, IoT, big data, AI, additive manufacturing, autonomous vehicles, augmented reality, like how the integration of these technologies with the traditional system can benefit, and it can be a boon for the entire supply chain. And last but not the least, you also focused on the improvements and the opportunities in process and the strategic outcomes and maturity measurement of the entire system. So it was wonderful to see you touching all these new areas and in supply chain. And I am sure like our students, our professors, and the external attendees today, like all of them will be surely benefited out of it. So thanks a lot, Professor Frederico, once again, and on behalf of the entire group. And I hope to see you again in future addressing IEM UEM family. And thanks to all the attendees for joining us. Wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Umesh. So it was really a pleasure to deliver this presentation. I'm open for new sessions in the future. Sorry for so many interruptions here. I had some technical problems, but at the end we have covered all topics, and I'm open to answer further questions, queries, and even the reason people decide to approach me. You can write a message. I'll be pleased to answer you. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the attendees. Thank you.
Bye bye.